Epitome IAS. So, in this particular session, we are going to talk about the constitutional perspective of gender justice. This was a question in the UPSC General Studies paper 2, 2023. So, UPSC is frequently asking the constitutional philosophy and the relevant case laws. Okay. So, it is not the first time actually Supreme Court, UPSC asking about the Supreme Court interpretations and judgments. So, aspirant must understand every case law in a given particular perspective. Okay. So, you need to understand whether this case law is relevant to this particular provision or that particular provision. That kind of calculation must be there in the mind of the aspirant. Okay. So, now let us understand what is this question about. Okay. So, before we understand this answer, how to write the answer for this particular question, let us understand something like the importance of constitution actually. So, constitution as a instrument of social change. Constitution shall be understood as an instrument of social change, right. So, if you try to compare Indian society versus Western society already undergone renaissance. So, where the reform already took place, right. So, people became aware of their rights, their modern values, and they understood what is the modern sense of equality and egalitarianism, etc. But when it comes to Indian society suffers from various problems. Okay. So, there are different issues, you can say casteism, regionalism, communalism, gender inequality. Like this, there are various problems, right. So, we think that we treat that constitution as an instrument of social change. So, constitution as a supreme law of the land, it must be able to address the fundamental problems in the society. So, in that perspective, we need to understand how the constitution is able to eliminate or minimize these kind of issues in the society. So, every time examiner will ask you this kind of concept in one or the other question. Once he has asked what is constitutional morality, now he has asked what is gender justice, how the gender justice is facilitated by the constitution. Like that, there are questions appearing in the UPSC mains examinations, right. So, in this sense, we can say Indian constitution is what? A social document. Okay. It is this idea was given by Granville Aston. According to the opinion of the Granville Aston, Indian constitution is a social document along with its political nature. Usually constitutions will be political in nature, but in India's case it is also social in nature. Why? Because Indian constitution has a very big task of transformation of the Indian society. For example, you take article 38, it aims at the establishment of social order, right. So, that kind of ideas are there with respect to the constitution of India. So, it visualizes the society to be a modern society. For example, if you try to see article 51A clause H, which says about scientific temper and rationalism, humanism. So, when you promote these values, definitely these ideas, these particular issues will be easily solved by the Indian society, right. So, in that sense we need to understand. Okay. So, let us come to this particular question. Explain the constitutional perspective of gender justice with the help of relevant constitutional provisions. First of all, we need to understand, we need to write what is gender justice. Okay. So, you do not require to define in the sociological term, you can define in a very generic term also, okay, in the general studies paper too. Okay. Right. So, in the introduction we will write like gender justice means correction of historical and social disadvantage suffered by women and transgenders in relation to access, okay, to access and enjoyment of resources in the society, okay, enjoyment of resources in the society, which creates barrier to realize their rights and potential. Okay, so that is what called as gender justice. Okay, so gender justice means it is a correction of historical and social disadvantage suffered by women and transgenders in relation to access, enjoyment of resources in the society, which creates a barrier to realize their rights and potential. That is what called gender justice. So, in other words, gender justice is all about liberation of women and transgenders from barriers, the barriers present in the society. Okay, so that is what called as gender justice. So, what is the question? Explain the constitutional perspective of gender justice with the help of relevant constitutional provisions. Relevant constitutional provisions. So, we need to write in the Constitution of India, gender justice is pervasive. Pervasive means it is present many parts of the Constitution. Pervasive in the form of special rights, special provisions, and social, political and economic opportunities. Economic opportunities. Economic opportunities. Right? So, particularly we are able to see the provisions related to gender justice in terms of preamble. In preamble, justice has been defined as social, economic and political justice. Okay. Preamble also mentions about liberty, equality, particularly equality of status and opportunity. Okay. Moreover, you are able to see what is the gender justice in terms of fraternity also. Fraternity means it is a psychological integration within society. Okay, of course, these are very broader terms. We can apply these terms in the gender justice perspective also. Okay, right. Then what else we have? We have the provisions in the fundamental rights. For example, Article 14, it talks about equal protection of laws. It talks about equal protection of laws. right? Similarly, Article 15, particularly class 3, special provisions for women and children. Moreover, Article 15 class 1 and class 2 also mentions about prohibition of discrimination based on sex, that is gender. Similarly, Article 16 class 2 also mentions that gender is not the basis for discrimination with respect to jobs or public employment, right? Moreover, Article 25 class 2 subclass B, it is about the state's role to ensure social reform. Article 23, like prohibition of bonded labor, and apart from that you have and prohibition of human trafficking. Prohibition of human trafficking, right? Similarly, we have even Article 25. Of course, Article 25 we have mentioned that, right? In the DPSP, in the Directive Principles of State Policy, so we have Article 39 class A, adequate livelihood for men and women, right? Next, class D, equal wages for equal work for both men and women, right? Next, Article 44, Uniform Civil Code. Okay. So, like this, there are various constitutional provisions, right? You can also see gender justice in terms of Article 41, state assistance to the distressed people, that include women, that particularly widows. Okay, so all these are covered under this. Okay, right. So then, coming to fundamental duties, we have Article 51A class E. Okay, what is that? Renouncing the derogatory practices towards a woman. Okay, so like this there are various provisions, like, and moreover Article 330A and 332A, that is about women reservation in Parliament, that is Lok Sabha, State Legislative Assembly. Right, we have Article 243D and 243T. So this is about reservation of women in Panchayat Raj institutions and urban local bodies. Right. So this is how there are various provisions in the Constitution which are going in the direction of providing equal opportunities for the women in the society. Okay, right. So then the other dimension of the question is, with the help of relevant constitutional provisions and case laws, right? So what are the case laws? What the Supreme Court has said in various cases, right? If we try to look at the case laws, right? So first of all, we can see Visakha versus State of Rajasthan, right? In this particular case, Supreme Court given the guidelines prohibiting sexual harassment at workplace. Okay, so this is providing the access to the women with respect to the workplace, because Article 19 class 1 subclass G and Article 21, these are protected. Even livelihood, Article 39 class A, Article 41 right to work. Okay, so these are being protected by this one. Okay, right. Similarly, Joseph Shine versus Union of India, in which Supreme Court has decriminalized the adultery. So as a result, women are not to be treated as inanimate objects. So they are living entities and they have to have dignity, and they cannot be considered as a property of men. So that idea was promoted by section 497 of IPC. So that has been negated by the Supreme Court, its judgment. Okay. Similarly, Shabarimala case, okay, in which Supreme Court said prohibition of entry of menstruating women into the Shabarimala temple is nothing but the manifestation of Article 17 of the Constitution, that is untouchability that is being promoted. Okay. So Supreme Court said that prohibition on women entry into temples is equivalent to untouchability. That is what the Shabarimala case, right? Next, Shayarabana case. In which Supreme Court has decriminalized, it has criminalized the practice of triple talaq, right? Coming to next important thing is Nalsa versus Union of India. Supreme Court has declared transgenders are to be treated as third gender, right? Joseph and Supreme Court also declared section 377 of IPC. 377 of IPC is to be invalid. Okay, in a case called as Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, right? This is how the transgender community got the equal rights on par with the other communities, right? So there is also a case about Gaurav Jain versus Union of India, okay, right? Jain versus Union of India, where Supreme Court has declared the children born to prostitutes also to get recognition. Right. So this is how Supreme Court has given various judgments, okay, promoting the concept of gender justice. Right. So in the conclusion, we need to write what we need to write. This both constitution in the form of various provisions and the Supreme Court in the form of various interpretations and judgments try to promote the gender justice by fighting against the stereotypes, inequalities and discriminations suffered in the name of gender, okay. In this way, their efforts are to reform efforts are directed towards or directed to reform the society and promotion of egalitarian society. So this is how we need to write the answer, right? Hope you got the essence of this answer, right? So look at this. So we have discussed various dimensions like preamble, fundamental rights, TPSP, okay, and other provisions in the Constitution, and we also provided the case law, okay, in the form of various judgments, and eventually we have written what should be the conclusion, okay, right. So in this way, when you have the basic understanding what is the purpose of the Constitution, what is the essence of the Constitution, what is the philosophy of the Constitution, it is very easy to write answers, okay. So we need to get a proper hold on the constitutional philosophy first. So that is a solution to find answer for various types of questions. Hope it is beneficial to you. So let's meet in the next video. Thank you.